After driving to Alaska 3 times and recently cruising to Alaska on the Discovery Princess, I've come up with some pros and cons on cruising to Alaska that I thought I would share with you to help you decide on the best way to visit Alaska for you. In this video, I'll share the things I like about the cruise experience to Alaska and its advantages, as well as the things that you'll miss and might be better off with a land-based trip. Let's get started. First, a big advantage to cruising is that it's all planned for you. You can go online to a cruise line or numerous other sites, make a phone call to a cruise line, or call your cruise travel agent and use your debit or credit card to make a deposit, and your cruise is all set. Your itinerary is set, and all you have to do is get to the embarkation cruise port on the appointed date and time. If you plan your own trip to Alaska, you'll have to do just that. Plan. You'll have to decide your daily itinerary, plan your stops, book your lodging, and map your route. Secondly, it is easier to budget for a cruise. If you eat on board in the included venues, have a drink package, and book excursions ahead of time, just add the cost of transportation to the disembarkation port, and you'll know what you're going to spend on the cruise. I did this on my recent Discovery Princess cruise, and my onboard account was barely over $100 when I disembarked. There are many more variables when you plan your own trip, such as the cost of lodging, food, fuel, and entertainment expenses, and these can vary greatly. Thirdly, you'll have entertainment and nightlife aboard. The allure of Alaska is the beauty of the dramatic landscapes, the rich culture, the wildlife, and the great outdoors. But when it gets dark, there's not a lot going on. You'll probably find yourself inside with a great book or going to bed early and getting a fresh start in the morning. If you're into nighttime entertainment, you'll appreciate the onboard entertainment and the availability that a cruise ship affords. Next, cruises offer many choices when it comes to what to do while in port. They will usually offer excursions to all the popular places and activities at each port of call. These can be planned, booked, and paid for on board or even before the cruise. They will guarantee to get you back to the ship on time and will generally have knowledgeable people conducting the excursion to answer your questions. You can certainly do all these yourself, but it would take far more planning and research to find the best ones. When on a cruise, you always know where you're staying at night and what you'll be eating. You won't have to book hotels and hope they turn out as the pictures and reviews say they will, and you won't face the choice of where to eat at every meal and how much it's going to cost. Just show up at a dining room and have a meal, or choose the buffet, or the set cost of a specialty dining venue. Finally, cruising to Alaska can be a more efficient use of time. On our recent cruise, even with flying to Seattle and spending a day before and after the cruise there, we were only gone for 10 days. Driving to Alaska was a month-long adventure at best, each time. Before I talk about the cons, would you take a minute to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so you don't miss any of our new videos? It costs you nothing and it really helps us continue to grow this channel. Also, if you've cruised, driven, or flown to Alaska, I would love to hear what you liked about the way you chose to do it. Just leave me a comment. So, what's the downside of cruising to Alaska? I've driven to Alaska from Texas 3 times, although it's been a number of years ago, and honestly I like both, but it depends on what you're looking for and what you want to get out of the journey. First of all, Alaska is big. Most cruises only stop at around 3 ports, with the most popular being Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway. A few cruises also go to Sitka, and fewer still call at Haines. The only way to access interior Alaska is a cruise tour that starts from the port of Whittier and uses buses or rail to access the Alaska interior, mostly Denali National Park. There is so much beauty to explore in the interior of Alaska, like Turnagain Arm, the Kenai Peninsula, Kenai National Park, the towns of Homer, Seward, and Valdez, where cruise ships seldom if ever stop. The cities of Anchorage and Fairbanks deserve time, as does Denali National Park, home to the tallest mountain in North America, and of course, all the spectacular Alaska Range. Secondly, getting there is half the fun. All 3 of our drives to Alaska started in Texas, and there was so much to see along the way. We took a different route each time and used the Alaska Marine Highway part of the way twice. Our trips allowed us to visit or revisit much of the United States West and the Rocky Mountains, places like Yellowstone and Glacier National Park, along with Olympic National Park and the Washington and Oregon coastlines. The border crossing into Canada is easy, requiring just your passport. The Canadian Rockies, the Fraser River, and the mountains in western British Columbia rival the scenery in Alaska, and spending time in these places made the trips even better. The drives in Skagway and Haines are two of the most beautiful drives I've ever been on. Thirdly, you can explore the Inside Passage on your own using the Alaska ferries. Even though towns like Ketchikan, Juneau, and Sitka cannot be reached by highway, you can reach them while exploring the Inside Passage on your own pace using the Alaska ferries, called the Alaska Marine Highway. These ferries stop at towns all along the Inside Passage and are a way of transporting your vehicle along with you. These are modern ships with basic amenities. They have basic cabins, onboard restaurants, and great observation areas. They run on a regular schedule, and you can get off for a day or two and catch another when you're ready to move on. I found that we sailed through many of the most scenic areas of the Inside Passage at night on the cruise, and the ferries allowed me to see them in daylight hours. Time spent in port is brief when cruising. On our recent cruise, we arrived in Ketchikan and Skagway early in the morning, and by the time we were up and ready, we had about 6 hours to spend in port. In Ketchikan, I spent this time wandering around the downtown area on foot and visiting historic Creek Street. In Skagway, I walked around town and then took the White Pass and Yukon Railway trip in what seemed like a must-do excursion. There were a number of excursions to choose from in both ports, but time restraints limited them. We arrived in Juneau in the early afternoon, which only left a few hours off the ship, which I spent walking around town again as I had in Ketchikan and Skagway. On previous trips to Alaska, I had spent one or more nights in each of these towns and found that I was able to do more things, sample the food, do some shopping, and in the case of Juneau, even take a day-long glacier and whale watching trip. Driving the highways between Alaskan towns reveals some of the most spectacular scenery. Even with the beautiful settings of Alaska's cities and towns, the best scenery most often lies outside of town. The Alaska Range is a mountain range that presents some of the tallest mountains in North America from bottom to top, and is highlighted by Denali National Park. The Kenai Peninsula is highlighted by the Kenai River and its yearly salmon runs. Homer and the Homer Spit is famous for halibut fishing. The drive to Seward is highlighted by the drive along Turnagain Arm and Portage Glacier, while the drive to Valdez is not to be missed with its beautiful waterfalls. You'll see way more wildlife and be closer to nature along the way. When cruising to Alaska, although we had naturalists on board to talk about the wildlife, I never actually saw much. When driving to and through Alaska, we had many sightings of black bears, grizzly bears, moose, Dall sheep, elk, caribou, and bald eagles. These sightings in the wild were highlights of our drives and generally occurred right along the roads as we were driving. I actually took a drive out of Tok, Alaska once in the early evening to likely spots for spotting moose, and was able to see more than one of them. So, what if you don't have the time for a month-long trip to Alaska? Well, it's possible to fly to Alaska and rent a car or even an RV if you like camping. Anchorage has a modern international airport and offers rental cars of all types. There are a number of private companies that rent RVs as well. I've never done this, but I've heard that you need to reserve well in advance to get what you want, and it's a very popular way to see Alaska. And remember, even though it may not seem like it sometimes, you are in the United States, and car rentals in Alaska are the same as in any other state. So, which would I prefer? Actually, both. Given the time, and if I had never been to Alaska, I would drive to Alaska. But I loved cruising to Alaska as well, and enjoyed revisiting highlights of the ports I had seen before, and hope to cruise to Alaska again soon. A big part of cruising to Alaska is the cruise itself, and if you like cruising, what better place to cruise to than Alaska? If I cruised to Alaska every year, I would be fine with that. If I could drive to Alaska and spend a month or two or three every couple of years, I'd do that too. Alaska is way too big for one trip, and has the most spectacular scenery I've ever seen in North America. Whichever you choose, and whatever way you explore Alaska, just go. I hope this has helped you decide how to visit Alaska, and more importantly, to plan your own trip to the 49th state. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, would you give us a thumbs up, share it, and leave us a comment to let us know what you think? We invite you to join us on our website at findushere.com, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon. And be sure to check out this video next for more travel fun. And don't forget to subscribe. Your subscriptions are always greatly appreciated.